welcome to another edition of Darwin Adele's Kitchen. Today we're going to make Philippine style burgers. Philippine, Polynesian, a little bit of that. Now before you say Polynesian and you say pineapples on the burgers, that's American. Alright? When I say American, that's basically Hawaiian and Californian. You may throw in some American Samoan there because, you know, it's infected that area. But that's basically American when you throw a pineapple in there. Alright? No self-respecting Polynesian is actually going to use a pineapple on a burger. Yeah. After saying that, you can throw a pineapple on there if you want. It actually tastes pretty good. Oh, I'll admit that. But no.
If you say so.
Yeah, true. Okay.
I never tried it.
No. I've tried it once. It's not too bad. But like I said, here I'm going to show the way to make a Filipino style / Polynesian style burger without a pineapple, the way my Filipino grandmother did it. Alright, now when I say that, this is how, in my family, you know, you got the Abads, the Rojas, and the Hunt-Concons, they all got together. Alright, this is how the Abads and the Rojas showed me how to do this. So basically, it's, you get some ground pork. Now in the Philippines, they did have cattle, but most of the ground beef was imported from New Zealand or Australia. Here, this is American ground beef. You know, just as good as Australian or New Zealand ground beef. And this, of course, is good old American pork that we got from Target, Adele's favorite French store. And some of the ingredients you're going to need, like the tomato and the red onion, that's going to take the place of the pineapple. That we're going to put on top. And actually, for true Filipino experience, you're going to add lime into the meat. Lime juice, that is. And then as well as garlic, and then egg to put all the meat together, and then ground pepper that you're gonna either buy freshly ground or you're gonna grind it yourself from black peppercorns and your mortar and pestle. Better use a mortar and pestle because that way you can really get into it. And then you're gonna use either breadcrumbs or ground or rice flour or rice powder. In the Philippines, we tend to use rice flour that you ground itself from rice in your mortar and pestle, as well as sweet peppers that you're going to put in the food processor, along with the two garlic bulbs. And that's basically it. We're going to make the we're going to mince all this up right quick, along with this in our food processor. And today's cooking aid, naturally, for the cook and the sous chef is a Voodoo Ranger. Naturally, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but this is our food. This is our cooking aid. And Voodoo Ranger.
What's that little mushroom one?
That looks like a mushroom. No, it's a skull.
Oh,
with goggles.
It's a skull wearing a hat with a mushroom on it.
Yeah. Anyway, Adele will give you a taste review as soon as we start cooking. So we'll be right back as soon as we mince this with this, and then we're going to make two batches. Okay, one's going to be with soy sauce. This will be for the Asian variety, which you would find in some place like Manila.
Yeah.
And the other batch, this is what the Abads and the Rojas would have eaten up in the mountains of northern Luzon. So this right here would be mountain style, okay, with Filipino style vinegar. White vinegar has lots of spices.
Yeah.
And you can get this in any Asian store, or you can find a Filipino restaurant or, you know, grocery store. It's very, very good. Very, very puts a very sharp kick into your burgers. So we'll be right back. Here's Adele mincing the two garlic bulbs.
What's that?
Mince it some more, honey. Next, you will mince the 12 sweet peppers we pulled out. Of course, you'll put the minced garlic in the little bowl we got prepared. And then she'll also put the 12 sweet peppers we pulled out, and she'll put in the same bowl. Love the smell of garlic. So do Filipinos, by the way. Now, the Spaniards were the ones who introduced garlic to the Philippines, by the way. As well as sweet peppers and other stuff like vinegar. And Adele preparing the sweet peppers. Now, you can use whatever peppers you want. You know, in the Philippines, the Abads and the Rojas, they love the peppery taste of sweet peppers in their burgers. You know, now other Filipinos, they love more spicier peppers or hotter peppers. Yeah, the Rojas and the Abads, they love a peppery taste, sweet peppers. So that's what I remember. So that's what I'm using. But use whatever peppers you want. Just remember, if you decide to use jalapeno peppers or the really hot peppers, the hotter your burgers are going to be.
Yeah.
Now, for the amount of meat we're using, we pulled out 12 small sweet peppers.
How's that?
That's fine, honey.
The first batch.
Yep. Just put in the same bowl that we put the minced garlic in. Now, the Abads were from San Fernando, Santa La Union. Matter of fact, they pretty much owned that place. They had a very large hacienda. The Rojas themselves, they were pretty much from Manila, Cebu, and Bohol. The Hunt-Concons themselves, they were from Cortez. That was also in Bohol. And a little bit from Cebu. So while we're cooking, I'll be discussing a little bit of genealogy. Now we're back. We're going to do the mixing process. Now I got 2 mixing bowls here. The reason why I'm doing that is because once I get everything mixed up in the main bowl, I'm going to take some of this meat out and put it here before I put the soy sauce or the vinegar in. And the reason why, I'm going to make 2 separate batches. One Asian style and the other one Northern Luzon style or mountain style. The Northern Luzon style will have vinegar in it. Very, very sharp Philippine style vinegar. So that way I can leave the taste of my childhood, as well as the Manila taste or Asian taste. So here I will put the American ground beef, which back in the day would have been New Zealand or Australian. And back in the day, it would have been mixed with Filipino ground pork. Mixed in with the Australian or New Zealand ground beef. Now, my Filipino grandmother, and in the Philippines, grandmother is known as Lola and grandfather Lolo. Now, she preferred New Zealand ground beef. I don't know why. She just said it was just better. I guess she thought that New Zealand had better grass than Australia. She just preferred New Zealand. Now here we're going to mix. This is the sweet pepper and garlic. So we put that on top. And what we use is 2 garlic bulbs and 12 sweet peppers. Now, depending on your taste, you can use whatever peppers you want. Yeah, the hotter, if you like hot, use very hot peppers. But remember, we use 12 sweet peppers here. You know, if you're using, like, say, Fresno peppers, you may want to use like 4 or 6 because they're very, very hot peppers. But again, if you like, you know, extremely hot peppers, go for it. But here we're using sweet peppers, because that's what the Abads and the Rojas loved. And here, about a tablespoonful of freshly ground black pepper. You can also add salt. I leave the salt out because, you know, I got a heart condition. But really, my Lola, she hardly used salt at all. She used salt if it was Australian beef. She didn't use salt when it came to New Zealand beef. Okay? Don't ask me why. She didn't. And breadcrumbs or rice flour. Guys, remember, when you're mixing stuff, think egg. Then you're going to add an egg because you're going to mix all this up. I took all my rings off because, like I said, you're making a meatloaf. So we're going to mix all this up, and then the last thing you're going to add, once you mix everything up, and once you separate everything, in my case I'm going to separate because I'm going to add one with soy sauce. You can also use teriyaki sauce, depending on your taste. And the other one I'm going to put Philippine vinegar. Then the last thing I'm going to add, before I start making patties, will be the lime juice. That's for your authentic Philippine taste. You can also use lemon juice too. I've seen other guys use lemon. I prefer what I grew up with as a little kid. And my Lola, she would use lime juice. She would just squeeze the lime in there. It just, oh, it was so damn good. Alright. So I want to start mixing it. And just like making meatloaf, we'll be back in a second. My wife will show me mixing up initially, then we'll be right back. Like I said, think meatloaf when you're mixing it. Okay, honey. Okay, now just like in making a meatloaf, you want to keep mixing this up until you can have a patty that sticks. However, we're not quite done yet. Not quite done yet, because now I'm going to take part of this and I'm going to put in this mixing bowl, because this right here I'm going to make patties into the Northern Luzon style. That's going to be with the Philippine vinegar. This right here will have soy sauce. So we'll have Asian Manila style, and this will be basically San Fernando Santa La Union style, mountain style. So we'll be right back. Now this is the Asian batch we're going to do. Now you add about about 4 tablespoons, large generous tablespoons of soy sauce or teriyaki sauce, whatever kind of Asian sauce you want to use, okay? That's up to your taste. Now my Lola, she preferred soy sauce. Alright, yeah, soy sauce is what she preferred. So, be generous. About 3 or 4 tablespoons. Okay, like that. And then you got to mix that up nice and well. And same thing with the Northern Luzon, or as I call it, the San Fernando Santa La Union batch. And remember, you can get this in pretty much any Asian grocery food store or Filipino grocery store. You have an international market close to your place, you can get this right there. You can get it there too. And it's very spicy. But again, 3 to 4 tablespoons. My wife will tell you it's very pungent.
Yeah, it smells good.
Yeah. Now I knew this one guy, instead of soy sauce or Filipino vinegar, he would add basically Vietnamese fish sauce. Mm-hmm. It's very pungent, but he liked it. So whatever floats your boat. Now we're going to mix this up. the soy sauce one. Mix it up nice and good. You can smell the soy sauce in the sucker already. Okay, really mix it up nice and good. Now see, you can turn this either into a burger or meatloaf. And same thing here with the one with the vinegar or fish sauce if you want to add it. Yeah, on a station in Fort Irwin, I made the same thing for this one guy, Vietnamese friend of mine. He decided to go with the fish sauce. It was actually pretty good. But I still like the Filipino one. Okay, now the piece de la resistance, the lime juice. We will be right back. Now I want to show you guys a trick if you don't like seeds in your burger. See this?
Uh-huh.
Just squeeze it, baby. Just squeeze that lime juice all in that meat. That way you don't have to worry about seeds. Just dig your fingers in there. Get all that lime juice out. And that's how you get that Filipino taste. Because the Filipinos will use lime in it. Like I said, they picked up the limes from the Spaniards. And the Abads and the Rojas, they did come from Spain. While the Hunt-Concons, they came from China. Northern China to be exact. Kowloon province, I believe. The same area of northern China that the legend Mulan comes from. Kowloon. Anyway, the earliest records I could find for the Hunt-Concons themselves was a marriage between House of Hunt-Concon, let's say the Casa de la Hunt-Concon, and the Casa de la Castillo. Now, marriage between Don Carpio Hunt-Concon with Doña Ambrosia Castillo in 1785. That's the earliest record I could find. What's interesting is the fact that the Con-Cons were already nobility. Because they married nobility, the Castillos. Now they were minor nobility. And that the Con-Cons have a legacy in Cortez of being hidalgos, hidalgas. But more importantly, they were alcaldes, mayors. They were already government officials. And they owned ships. I contacted one of the Rojases in Spain. They're a very powerful family. And I got one reply back. While I was like researching my family. Just one reply back. Old gentleman. He was a Rojas. He was like in his 90s, late 90s. And he heard about the Con-Cons. His family left Manila way back in the day after the Americans won the Spanish-American War, so they left a lot of properties behind. But he said he heard about us. We owned ships. That's what he knew about us. The Con-Cons owned ships. They did. And also his family fought against us during the Katipunan uprisings. That was when it was the Philippine, Spanish-Philippine War. War of Independence. Against the Spaniards. So, yeah. Apparently he was still pissed off about that. But hey, the Rojas married the Abads, and the Abads intermarried with the Con-Cons. So that's how those things work in genealogy. But the Rojas were big in the Philippines. They were also part of the Spanish imperial garrisons, along with the Abads. Now, what I would like to happen, since I can't do it myself right now, is the fact that I would like to have one of my family who live in Cortez Bohol, to go to the municipal building, because the problem is in Manila there are no records, prior to 1945, only because the Imperial Japanese Army destroyed most of the records. And whatever they didn't destroy, the Americans destroyed during the Battle of Manila. Because the Japanese and the Americans fought over the government buildings. They were used as bunkers. So that's why there are no records there, particularly at the time of Imperial Spain. However, the records still survive in Cortez, Bohol, and also in Cebu, since those areas were not fought over as much as they were in Manila, which was the big battleground. Alright, now we're getting ready to cook. And first thing I want to do though is Adele is going to give you a taste review of Voodoo Ranger IPA. How's it taste, honey?
It is good.
Alright, so let me go preheat the pan. And I want to show you the patties I made. Now, this is the Asian patties, or Manila patties. This has the soy sauce. I want to show you this patty right here right quick. And this right here, you can see basically the black pepper. You can see the granules of the minced garlic and the peppers. Now, Adele asked me a question. She says, what if people don't like peppers? You can get a sweet onion and mince that up and just add it to here. Okay? So basically have a sweet onion and garlic burger. With black pepper. But anyway, these are the patties with soy sauce. So these are your Asian Manila burgers. And these are your Northern Luzon burgers with the vinegar. So I'll be cooking these shortly as soon as the pan warms up. And Adele is slicing up the tomato. And one thing I forgot to show you, these are the cheese we'll be using for our cheeseburgers. Asian, Philippine style. Pepper jack and sharp cheddar, two of our favorite cheeses. So we'll be cooking in about 6 minutes. Here, cook the burger is basically at medium heat. That's what I'm doing right now. And here you can see, like I say, definitely see the peppers as they're coming out. And I wish you guys could smell it, man. Now these are the Asian ones, or Manila ones. You definitely smell the soy sauce, and you can smell definitely the lime coming out and the garlic. It smells really, really good. But as I was going back, I was trying to convince one of my relatives who lives in Cortez to go to the municipal building, because like I said, the records still exist, particularly the Catholic Church records still exist over there. And if the rumors or the legends I've heard is correct, that the Hunt-Concons, who were basically El Jefes, alcaldes, very important people in Cortez on Bohol, is correct. They actually donated the land where the cemetery, the municipal cemetery, lies. That the oldest part of the cemetery should have the graves of our ancestors there, which means those graves, the oldest graves, should have Chinese characters. And there we would actually see exactly how the last name Con-Con was originally spelled, because Con-Con itself was Latinized from the original Chinese spelling. I would love to know what the Chinese spelling originally looked like, the original Chinese characters, because according to a DNA relative from Macau, China, who contacted me a few years back, there are two meanings for Con-Con. One meaning is from Old Mandarin, Ancient Mandarin, which means freeman, freedom or freeman. The other one is Hokkien, a coastal island dialect, which is still spoken in the Philippines and some sparse islands or very small island communities, which means grandfather. So Con-Con has two meanings. One means freedom, freeman, you receive your freedom. The other one is grandfather. So I would love to see the original basically spelling, the Chinese characters for our last name, because that would probably tell us exactly what the actual meaning was. Was it Freeman? Were the Con-Cons Freeman? Or was it actually the dialect for grandfather? Because whatever it was Latinized to Spanish C-O-N, so it'd be interesting to see what it was. However, the Spaniards got to the Philippines at about 1517. Their first colony was about that time, around that time, and their first permanent colony was in Cebu. What the Spaniards discovered was that there was already an existing Chinese colony there, and I suspect my ancestors were already in that Chinese colony. And the Chinese, being entrepreneurs and opportunists, they saw a opportunity trading with the Spanish. So I suspect my ancestors were already in that colony, because by 1795, around there, 1795, about the 1790s, 1780s, 1770s, they were already hidalgos, or I should say Spanish nobility, and they were well established, having donated the land in Cortez, Bohol for the municipal cemetery. So I suspect in the church records of the Roman Catholic Church, we are going to find about when their knighthood, their nobility was granted. Because there you'll find the early church records of weddings about when they were granted. Like I said, you'll see something about Don Con-Con marrying Doña whoever, earlier than the first recorded weddings of about 1798 between Carpio Con-Con and Ambrosia Castillo of Has Castillo, because he was already a Don. So it'd be interesting to find out, exactly what the original spelling of our last name was, and when did they become hidalgos? When did they get their knighthood? When were they become nobles? When did they get their nobility?
like I said, it used to be interesting to find out. It's one of those puzzles that I would like to find out before I die. Because like I said, they had intermarried already with the Castillos, the Castellanos, a bunch of other nobles they had already married into. Now, the Abads, they married into the Abads and the Rojases in 1928. So, I mean, and they were already nobles. The Abads, like I said, they were in the second group. They could have been in the first group of Spanish occupiers, invaders, but they were definitely in the second group that invaded Manila, occupied Manila, and were in the first battle of Manila Bay against the Muslims, against the Raj. And they arrived there in 1571. Those second group, the second group of Spanish invaders, the Abads themselves, had already fought in the siege of Malta, the Great Siege of Malta, against the Turks. Suleiman Magnificent in the siege of Malta of 1565. And you know, after the siege, they left to go find other hiding ground, left to find other opportunities, and they found it being part of the garrison of Mexico City. And from there, and basically the garrison of Mexico City back then, it was a holding area for Spanish mercenaries, looking for opportunities in Central, South America, and in the Pacific, wherever the vast holdings of Imperial Spain was at. And basically, the Spanish governor said, hey, I've got openings for an invasion of the Philippines in northern Luzon. Those who are interested, apply here. They applied, and they were in the second group of invaders, and they stayed because they had opportunities for land, opportunities for conquest, and they did a good job, and they stayed. And eventually in 1928, they intermarried with my family, the Hunt-Concon, but they had already intermarried, like I said, with the Rojas, a very powerful family. I don't know when the Rojas got to the Philippines, but they were already major landowners. And at the time of the Spanish-American War, when the Americans had taken over the Philippines from the Spanish, many of the Rojas went back to Spain, they went back to Madrid, but many also stayed there, and they're the ones who I met in Abad, with the Abads in San Fernando, Santa Lucia when I was a little boy. As you see, these burgers right here are looking good. Now remember, you've got pork in these burgers here. So you can't really have a medium rare, you've got to cook it well done. So that's part of the genealogy of my family. Okay, yeah. Now these are 2 new burgers I'm cooking right here. Like I said, I've got it on, like I say, medium heat, but you want to take your time cooking these burgers. But you also want to cook them very well for the pure simple reason you've got pork in them. So you can't have, like say, medium well or medium rare, because you got pork. Now, I want to talk about the Abads, because I've had several of my cousins, my relatives, both in Australia, in the Philippines, and in Europe, who are of Asian descent, like I am, Asian, Filipino descent, who've asked, like I said, my uncle in Australia, he is the eldest of the Hunt-Concons, and direct descendant of my Lola and Lolo. My Lola being a direct descendant of the Abads and the Rojas and the Aquinos. Okay, so she is a direct descendant, like I said, of the Abads who came from Spain, who are the direct descendants of those Abads who were men at arms. And you should look up the term men at arms. They're not really knights, but these Abads became knights after the Battle of Toro in 1476. They served directly Queen Isabella I of Spain. When she was a princess, they were her bodyguards. When she was a princess of Spain, before she became Queen Isabella I of Spain. And during the wars of Castilian succession, And like I said, when her uncle decided that he was going to become king of Spain and marry her off to a Portuguese or a Frenchman, I forget which, she didn't want to get married to him, so instead she married her second cousin, King Ferdinand I of Aragon, and claimed the crown of Castile for herself. And King Ferdinand basically pledged his loyalty to his wife and his second cousin, Queen Isabella I. She needed an army. King Ferdinand of Aragon provided that army, but a bunch of the nobility of Spain, and if you ever read about the Reconquista of Spain against the Moors, the Muslims, who had most of Spain at that time, you'll find out a lot of the Spanish nobles supported the Muslims because the Muslims paid well, the Moors paid well, like I said, and there was a lot of intrigue, Machiavellian intrigue in Spain at that time. But anyway, my ancestors, the Abads, remained loyal to her princess, and King Aragon King Aragon II of King Ferdinand II of Aragon, he commanded Queen Isabella I's army at the Battle of Toro, which basically secured her the crown of Castile, which later became the crown of Spain. And my ancestors fought on that battlefield. They remained loyal to their princess, and she remained loyal to them. Because after the Battle of Toro in 1476, she basically granted them their knighthood. They became noble after that battle. So basically speaking, they were Dons, and the whole family became noble themselves. So they were no longer commoners. And the way it works in Spain, their family became noble, so their descendants became Dons and Doñas, all the way down to me. Now what I did was that when I contacted the Spanish authorities for a wee fee, about $1,400, and they'll got on me on that. I say, hey, I'm a Don. By birthright, I'm a Don.
Yeah.
So now my children and their children, from here on out, because I paid the $1,400 to the Spanish authorities, will themselves become Dons and Dañas. And anybody who are descended from my Rosario Aquino Abad Concon and Juan Sapong Concon, but definitely from my grandma, my Lola, from here on out are going to be Dons and Doñas for life. All right, following Spanish customs are Dons and Doñas. Only because I paid the $1,400. Okay, but that's not here or there. But anyway, but yeah, because of the Battle of Toro, they became noble. So now, my uncle graciously donated his DNA through Family Tree DNA and through Family Tree DNA and through 23andMe, and because of that, to those results, I discovered then and there that the research I did and the paperwork, documentation, and paying another $1,000 to a researcher in Spain, researching the Abads themselves, and through the DNA analysis, is the fact that yes, they are from Castile because through DNA they are Ashkenazi Jews, or they married Ashkenazi Jews, because the center of Ashkenazi Jews is Castile. And if you know anything about the Ashkenazi Jews of Spain, after Queen Isabella and King Aragon, King Ferdinand borrowed money from the Jews to help them fight the Moors, they screwed them. All right, they told them, hey, you must convert or die, or whatever else they want to do to them. So a lot of them did convert and married Catholics, like the Abads. That's how I suspect the Abad DNA received Jewish DNA and ended up with the Concons. Now also through documentation, because a lot of Concons ask me, okay, how is it that we have Scotch, Irish, Germanic, and French blood? It was through what you call marriage. Since the Abads were now nobles, they married other nobles. They married other minor nobles, such as the Shannon Mackenzies. Now the Shannon Mackenzies, like the Abads, were mercenaries, low mercenaries, but they were still noble blood. Not only them, remember, the Abads also married the Rojases. They intermarried with the Rojases. They intermarried with the Castellanos. Okay? Now they were also noble families from Spain. They in turn also married other noble families of Europe. French. The Abads married with the French lines too. Italian, Scotch, Irish, the English. So that's how we got all this DNA mixed in with us. And if it wasn't for my uncle volunteering his DNA, I would never know this. I would only have the documentation, but with the DNA analysis, I also got the DNA to back up the documentation. So yes, the Hunt-Concons also have European DNA. Alright? Now, because of all the generations, a lot of that is just very, very minute, but it's still there. Our ancestors are still there with us. Now comes my American ancestry that gets involved. Now my father, after World War II, alright, came to the United States. Why? He earned his citizenship through killing the Japanese in Bataan. So people say, your father never should have come here because he's not a citizen. He earned his citizenship by killing Japanese soldiers for the United States. So let that be. Yes, people said he had issues. Well, if you served in Bataan for 6 months, starving, getting shot at by you're running out of ammunition, you're running out of food, you're running out of medicines. Yeah, you had issues too. Alright, he was 16 years old when he fought the Japanese. He was in the first bayonet charge conducted by the United States Army. He was in the second bayonet charge conducted by the United States Army, and he was 16. Alright, because all Filipino troops belong to the United States. So yeah, he earned his way to this country. Anyway, that's not here or there. He met this red-headed, green-eyed woman at the emergency room in Baptist Memorial Hospital named Olivia Irene Spears Duval. And she is descended from Marin Duval. She was descended from a lot of people, but Marin Duval is her main ancestor, her 9th great-great-grandfather, and he is a veteran from the English Civil War. He fought for his sovereign, King Charles I, who lost his head. And because he served on the wrong side of the English Civil War, he ended up in Maryland colony, basically speaking, he had to fight the Native Americans for 7 years on the frontier. Oh man, these burgers really, really smell good. Anyway, back to my ancestor, Marin Duval. Yeah, she would be my mother's 9th great-great-great-grandfather. Anyway, now he was indentured to Colonel William Burgess, as well as, and Colonel William Burgess, he had indentured to him several other gentlemen volunteers, and which he took from England. And all these gentlemen, all these other gentlemen volunteers all had one thing in common with Marin Duval: they served the wrong person during the English Civil War, which was King Charles I. Now, when people hear the word indentured servant, they're thinking about guys who are farming the land, basically pulling rutabagas out of the land. Well, I can guarantee you, Marin Duval and the other gentlemen volunteers were not pulling beets or rutabagas out of land. These guys were all veterans and were very good soldiers. And William Burgess, when he was tasked with the job of defending the frontier of the Maryland colony, the Virginia colony, and the Pennsylvania colony. So he was not going to bring farmers or anybody else here. He was bringing warriors, veterans, people who knew what they were doing. So he brought all these guys here, initially to Virginia colony because they were blown off course, to, what was it, well, I can't remember the name of the town. Very famous place. People were starting there one time. Not Roanoke, but the other place. And waiting for a ship to sail up north. And let's see, and then from there, they went to Baltimore. Baltimore, someplace around there. And then from there, they went to the frontier. Now, there's not much written about Marin Duval for those 7 missing years. He was indentured, or more, the best term to say would be contracted. He was contracted for 7 years to fight the Native Americans there on the border. And at the end of 7 years, he was provided with 50 acres. And then from those 50 acres, he basically ended up with thousands of acres. And then after King Charles II was, after the death of the usurper Cromwell, Oliver Cromwell, and King Charles II was brought back to the throne. Whatever Marin Duval lost in England for serving on the wrong side, he got back tenfold. In Maryland, the Maryland colony, and he died a very, very rich man. But more importantly, if you read the accounts of Marin Duval from other people at that time. Oh, by the way, if you want to know what he did for the 7 missing years, you read the accounts of Colonel William Burgess, all the dispatches he sent to the controlling authority of the Maryland colony and back to England. And Marin went through hell, as well as the other guys who served on the border. And you can tell when you read the accounts of Marin Duval, he suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, as we would call it today. And there's one account there where when the Native Americans attacked the frontier settlements of Maryland, where Marin Duval was basically given this land, they specifically went after him in one of the accounts, because apparently he was a badass. And a lot of the survivors during that Indian raid went directly to his home. And according to family legend, they have his sword in one of the museums, and the sword has blood marks still on it. He led a contingent of other survivors, and he attacked the Indian attackers. He didn't wait for them to come to him. He went directly towards them, because he was a fighter. So I'm glad to say I'm descended from him, because I like to think I'm a fighter myself. So yeah, that my mom is a descendant from him, and a lot of my Duval relatives and Duval descendants are fighters. So I like to say that I like to think that they are a descendant of that fighter who came from the English Civil War and who basically survived 7 years on the frontier fighting Native Americans. And like I said, during that one account of the Indian raid on the Maryland settlements, they went after him, because apparently he was a bad guy, a bad mofo, in other words. So they respected him because they went after him. And so my mom was sent for him, but my father met her at Baptist Memorial Hospital because she suffered, lights would bother her. So what's that word called, honey? When lights bother you?
Photosensitive, maybe?
Yeah, photosensitive, something like that. And so her ankle got pierced by a sharp piece of cornstalk.
And epilepsy, maybe?
Epilepsy.
Yeah.
And my grandfather and my aunt took her to the emergency room where my father was working at. And my father was at Baptist Memorial because his when he was at Harvard Medical School, he graduated with top honors, and he had a job there, basically at Boston, another job waiting for him at Buffalo, but he hated the winters. So he talked to his the chief of medicine, the chief of surgery at Harvard, and see if there was some way he could get a job somewhere down south, not knowing how the South was at that time in the 50s, and because he just hated the winters. And the chief of surgery there at Harvard, Harvard Medical School, basically called a buddy of his at Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis, and my father, they scarfed him up just like that. So he had a job at Baptist Memorial Hospital, and that's where he met my mom, and that's where my story happened. So yeah, so my father, like I said, because of his high grades and stuff, that his schooling was abruptly stopped for basically almost 3 years because of World War II. He continued his studies and went to the University of the Philippines, went to medical school there, and took a test for Harvard and got accepted. And all expense paid trip by Uncle Sam to Harvard Medical School, where he graduated. And like I said, that's where my story began, when he met my mother. So it's funny how genealogy, when you study about how family history works, and then you start studying basically after my retirement from the Army and everything else. That's where I studied the genealogy of my family. It's just fascinating. So if you have a chance, you have to study your family history. It is a fascinating journey. How all these things just works out. From basically men at arms who served under Queen Isabella I. To my Chinese ancestors who basically migrated from Zhaolu, China, thousands of years ago, found themselves in a Chinese colony in Cebu, and then they ended up marrying, minor Spanish nobility, guys who fought under, Queen Isabella I's banner, and then they fought in the Great Siege of Malta in 1565, ended up in the Philippines, and then Martin Duval, who was on the losing side of the English Civil War, ended up, in the colonies. And all this stuff just happened, and then I'm here. So it's great. Anyway, we're going to finish cooking here. We're going to cook the French fries, and then my wife and I are going to feast. So until our next Darwin and Dell's Kitchen, we'll see you guys later. Say goodbye, honey.
Bye. Bye, y'all.
Bon appetit, my love. Your meal is ready, my queen. Bon appetit, my love. Bon appetit.